No one wanted to go near Richard Hale. Not his employees, not the neighbors, not even the doctors who'd just told him his time was running out. People admired him from a distance, whispered about his empire, but no one actually spoke to him. He carried that cold silence home one stormy night, his chest heavy with the words advanced and inoperable echoing in his mind like a death sentence carved in stone. He dropped his coat in the hallway of his massive estate, a place so big it could have held 100 people, yet so empty it might as well have been a tomb. He sat down alone in his study, trying to pretend nothing hurt until a single tear betrayed him. And that was when everything began to change. He didn't notice the soft footsteps until she was already standing in the doorway. A little girl barefoot, curly hair messy from sleep, a tissue crumpled in her hand as if she had been waiting for the right moment to use it. Her name was Lily, the daughter of Mariah the housekeeper who had worked quietly in that home for the past year. Richard's first instinct was to straighten up, wipe his face, put the mask back on. But she had already seen it. Instead of gasping or asking questions, she walked right up to him with the kind of calm you don't expect from an 8-year-old. Without a word, she reached on her toes, touched his cheek, and whispered, "Mommy says you're supposed to let the bad feelings leave." Then she let go, sat cross-legged on the rug, and stayed there, like his sadness was something worth sharing, not hiding. Richard had survived boardrooms full of predators, government hearings, and courtroom battles that could have destroyed men twice as tough. Yet somehow, this child's soft touch and simple words cut through him more deeply than any verdict ever had. He didn't reply. He just let himself breathe. For the first time in decades, he wasn't the untouchable CEO. He was just a man with a tear on his face and someone who'd noticed. Days passed, and Richard found himself pulled into moments he would have once ignored. At 3 a.m, unable to sleep, he wandered down to the kitchen and froze when he saw Lily standing on a stool, flipping pancakes with her mom. The air smelled of butter and flour. The counters were a mess, and the girl was humming as if the whole world belonged to her. "I thought I was the only one awake," Richard muttered. Mariah glanced at him with a shrug. She woke up hungry. Lily spun around, holding up a lopsided pancake. "This one looks like Australia." Richard actually laughed, a real, unguarded laugh, something he hadn't heard from himself in years. He sat at the little kitchen table, awkward at first, then slowly at ease, eating pancakes that were slightly burnt, but tasted more real than any catered meal he'd ever had. Another time he found Lily in the west wing of the mansion, a section he had locked away since his sister's death. She was running her tiny fingers across the dusty piano keys, pressing one until a faint broken note stirred the silence. "Every house should have music," she said without looking up. "Otherwise, it feels too sad." Richard swallowed hard. That room had been a shrine to his grief, a locked vault he never wanted touched. Yet here she was, unafraid of the dust, unafraid of the silence bringing back echoes of his sister's laughter and Chopin drifting through the halls. For the first time in years, he didn't feel haunted, he felt invited. But it wasn't all soft moments. There was the day his phone rang with the oncologist's voice on the line delivering harsher words than before, aggressive limited options time frame. Richard walked out to the garden, fists tight around his phone, trying not to let anyone see. When he turned, Lily was there again, standing on the gravel path. She didn't ask. She didn't beg for explanations. She just pulled a dandelion from her pocket, half its fluff still intact, and placed it in his palm. "This is for wishing the sickness away," she said. That fragile stem in his hand felt heavier than the entire diagnosis. He crouched down, choking on the lump in his throat. "Thank you," he whispered. She just nodded as if that was enough. And somehow, it was. Then came the storm. A coastal gale ripped the power out, plunging the mansion into darkness. Richard found Mariah lighting candles, her daughter clutching a blanket. Storms are less scary when there's stories, Lily declared, plopping onto the rug. She started spinning a tale about castles in the clouds, guarded by polite dragons who wore little capes. At first, Richard just listened, skeptical. But soon she was pulling him in, asking what the king should eat for dinner, daring him to invent part of the story. And he did. He surprised himself smiling as he argued that dragons couldn't possibly have table manners. For hours, the three of them sat there in candlelight, laughing and imagining a world where even dragons could be gentle. The storm outside howled, but inside something softer took root. For the first time in forever, Richard wasn't thinking about death, he was living. When his first chemotherapy session came, Richard half expected to go alone. People usually avoided hospitals unless they had to. But when he mentioned it casually over breakfast, Mariah said without hesitation, "Of course we'll come." Lily piped up with her mouth full of toast. "I'm going too." That morning at the clinic, as the IV dripped into his arm, Lily climbed into the chair beside him with her sketch pad. She drew 3 stick figures, 1 tall man, 1 woman with a ponytail, 1 little girl wearing a crown. Handing it to him, she said proudly, "That's us. And you're smiling." Richard raised a brow. "Why am I smiling?" Her answer was simple, unwavering. "Because you will again." He folded that drawing carefully and tucked it into his wallet, right next to the only picture he still carried of his parents. A business empire couldn't heal him, but a child's belief, somehow it did. One night, staring at the blinking cursor of his laptop, Richard began drafting his will. The legal jargon, being of sound mind, dividing assets, felt empty. So he opened a blank document and wrote instead, "Dear Lily." He poured out the truth that he had lived guarded, convinced solitude was strength, until she taught him otherwise. That her touch, her pancakes, her dragons, her drawings had cracked open the walls he thought were unbreakable. And then he typed words he had never dared say aloud, "I love you like you're mine." He printed the letter, hid it beneath the lid of the piano she loved, and left it there for the day she'd be ready to find it. Not today, not while she was still a child, but one day. On her 9th birthday, Richard threw a party in the very West Wing he had once sealed shut. He brought in balloons, a cake, even rented an upright piano. When Lily walked in, her jaw dropped. She didn't run to the gifts or the cake, she ran to the piano. "Does it work?" she gasped. "Try it," he said. She hit a note, grinned wide, and began making up a silly little song, humming off key with joy. Mariah stood back, hand over her mouth, tears in her eyes. Richard, for once, wasn't worried about appearances. He was too busy laughing when Lily declared, "It's the best piano ever, but joy comes with trials." Not long after, in the dead of night, Mariah's phone rang. Lily had spiked a dangerous fever. Richard was already at her door jacket on keys in hand. "I'll drive," he said, and didn't give her room to argue. At the hospital, he sat by Lily's bedside, holding her tiny hand for hours, whispering, "You're okay, just rest." Near dawn, half asleep, she murmured through fevered lips, "Don't go, Richard." Those 3 words hit him harder than any prognosis ever had. She wanted him to stay, not just in that hospital room, but in her life. And in that moment, he made a silent vow he wasn't going anywhere. Months passed. Scans brought cautious hope. The doctor uttered a word Richard hadn't allowed himself to believe in: remission. Walking out of the hospital, Mariah squeezed his hand. Richard sat in the car, hands gripping the wheel, finally allowing himself to imagine a future that wasn't defined by endings, but beginnings. The following week, he unlocked his father's old study, a room that had been closed as long as anyone could remember. He handed Mariah and Lily 2 keys, 1 silver, 1 gold. "This house is yours as much as mine." "Now," he said. Lily blinked, then launched herself into his arms with surprising force. "You're my bonus dad now," she declared. Richard froze, then hugged her back tighter than he ever had before. And just like that, the house no longer echoed with emptiness. It breathed. Looking back, Richard Hale had built skyscrapers, negotiated billion-dollar deals, outmaneuvered governments. Yet his greatest legacy wasn't in any ledger or skyline. It was in the quiet laughter of a little girl in pajamas flipping pancakes at 3 a.m., the candle-lit dragons in a storm, the hand he held in a hospital, the drawing tucked beside his parents' photo. He had believed solitude was strength. Lily showed him that strength was letting someone in, and maybe that's what I want to leave you with. Sometimes it's not money or power that saves us, but the smallest gesture from the most unexpected person. A hand on your cheek, a drawing on crumpled paper, a child whispering, "Don't go." So let me ask you, do you think Richard was right to let down his guard to hand over those keys to become someone's bonus dad? Or should a man who built his life on walls have kept them standing? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your stories. Have you ever seen someone transform because of one small act of kindness? Let's talk about it. And if this story moved you, hit subscribe, because the world needs more of these conversations, more of these reminders that even the strongest walls can fall when touched by love.